What's up, guys? Homie G-Dog 456 here, and in this video I'm gonna give you kind of like an how-to, not really an how-to, more like just some tips on fertilizing your planted tank, because a lot of people don't really know how to get that balance with their planted tank. You know, some will try under fertilizing, some might try in between, you know, some might try without CO2. This is what I'm doing. This is what I find works best for me. You can incorporate this into your tank pretty easily after I show you some of the fertilizers I use and just some easy tips. So I'm going to start off just with the regimen that I actually use, like the fertilizers that I actually use. The main two, I'll show you without dropping them. I'll show you right here. It's a little bit cluttered right here, so I gotta find them. Here we go. The main one I use, of course, is your Flourish Comprehensive Plant Supplement. This fertilizer is very popular just because of the Flourish name and how widely available it is. You know, you can find it at a lot of your local pet stores. And it's a little pricey, but it definitely lasts a while. You only put 5 milliliters, or I only put 5 milliliters of this in, maybe a little more, per week. So it's going to last a while, considering it's a 250 milliliter jug. Just this little thing right here, this costs you about 15 bucks, maybe 17, and it'll last you a long time. And I have this little one here that I got for backup. For when I run out, it was 10 bucks, and you can see that it's not very big. It's only 100 milliliters, so 10 bucks. It's a little on the pricey side, but it definitely lasts a long time. And this stuff it's newer. I haven't been dosing this for very long, maybe 2 months, and I've seen great improvements from using this. It's called Nutrifin Plant Grow, and it's basically iron enriched, and it has some nitrogen and some trace elements. It's got some copper, boron, you know, stuff like that. And it does have a very high iron content, so it's got 0.26%, which is pretty high for the amount you put in. For a 65 gallon, I would put in about a full capful. I'll just show you one of my capfuls. So one cap is 25 milliliters, so I'd put a whole one plus another 5. So it'd be about 30 milliliters per week of the stuff that I put in. And those are the two main ones. Everything else is kind of extra to make up for some deficiencies. So as you can see, I got right here Flourish Trace. I dose that maybe once, twice a week. Usually once a week with the Flourish Comprehensive. Let me just clear some of the crap out of here, like the stuff that I'm not showing in this video. Some of this crap. Maybe I should have prepared better for this. But, so, for example, I got the Flourish Comprehensive and Flourish Trace. I would dose those on Monday, and say Wednesday or Thursday comes along, I would dose the recommended of this. And another thing that I want to talk about quickly is Flourish Excel. Now, if you don't have CO2 running, I even still wouldn't recommend dosing this daily. I've seen some negative results with the fish health on dosing Flourish Excel daily. So I would recommend, it's definitely good for the plants, like the plants love this stuff. And the algae, I found, doesn't like it as much, so it kind of keeps your algae down in certain cases, with certain types of algae, I should say. But this, I would dose maybe 10 milliliters of this a week for a 65 gallon. That's because I have CO2 running. If I didn't, I still would only dose maybe 20, 25 milliliters, you know. And that's spread out through the whole week, not at once. So that's every other day or something like that. And okay, so Wednesday or Thursday comes along, I would dose the recommended of Plant Grow, maybe 10 milliliters of Excel, and if I need to, this supplement here, you're probably not going to find this anywhere. I got it on sale. It's got a good amount of potassium and some more iron and a little bit of trace elements, not very much, but I mainly got it for the potassium because I got this big thing right here for 20 bucks on sale, so it's a pretty good deal, really. It's soluble potash, so that's, it's the good stuff. It was definitely a good deal. I couldn't toss it up, and I've been using it since, and it again has great results. If you overdose on this stuff, I find that you get some algae blooms, or you have some extra algae on the side of the tanks, maybe some hair algae. So you got to be careful with that because it has a good amount of iron too, and that's what causes it. And when you overdose your iron, or you get too much, when you get too much of anything, really, when you're out of balance, you're going to get algae, and that's basically the hardest part of getting your planted tank to where you want it, is getting it balanced. It's getting to know your regimen and to know what you're going to be dosing. Like, you can't be changing it up all the time, because when you do that, you're going to get algae, guaranteed. You have to get that balance. And I always say this to anybody that asks me, you have to do it through trial and error. That's the best way to learn. You can read stuff all you want, you can listen to what I have to say here, but the real way you're going to learn is through trial and error, through your own work. Through dosing something 1 week, seeing how that turns out. Maybe change it up a little bit for the next week. If you see any improvements, then keep doing that. If you see algae, maybe cut back. You got to look back at what you're doing wrong. Maybe you're dosing too much of this and that. And all this that I'm talking about is for liquid ferts. If you're doing dry ferts, you probably already know all this. And this thing's actually leaking. Hold on a second. Or not leaking, sorry, but it's got a little crap on the side. Now, where was I? Yeah, if you're dosing dry ferts, most of this you probably already know. And dry ferts are actually a lot easier to dose because you just get a tablespoon, you get your precise measurement and you put it in. And you do it every week, once a week or whatever. And you reset everything with a water change. There's tons of different ways to do that. I won't get into that. I'm just going to show you what I'm doing. Now, once you have all this dosed, like I said, you got to watch your plants. The plants are your biggest indicator of any deficiencies. So if you have a potassium deficiency, you're going to see it. You're going to see it in your leaves. If you have iron deficiency, you're going to see that also. You're going to see it, like you can see in one of my older leaves on the Amazon sword. This leaf's been on since I got this plant. I actually got to take it off here. I've been meaning to do that because it's kind of a sore thumb, really, because you can see all the other leaves are doing great, and then this one's it's even got a different shape. That's just the way it grew and in the other tank, basically. And I thought it would come back, but sometimes they don't. So you just got to basically trim them off, and it's more energy for the good leaves to grow. And that'll be a different video. I can do a video on trimming because, like, I obviously do a lot of it with all this rotella in the back, and like all these need trimmed pretty well, except for the crypts. They kind of they'll melt away on their own when they die, or when the leaves die. So I really don't have to worry about that too much. There's one of my rainbows. He's probably my favorite. Come on, focus now. Just give you a little view here before I keep on blabbering. But there's only so much that you can do when you're first starting out with planted tanks, other than trial and error, because you're not going to really know what works until you've tried it yourself. So that's definitely my main tip, is trial and error with your fertilizing, because like you've probably heard before, everyone's tank's different. Everyone has a different what they want out of their tank. My tank, I like it with little to no algae. So algae really is a pet peeve. not so much the algae on the glass, but definitely on plants. Like if I see algae on the plants, then you've got a problem. Especially on like the sword, Amazon sword leaves. That's a melon sword actually, that's not an Amazon sword. These are Amazon swords, and that might be actually. I know the one on the back. Yeah, this might be an Amazon sword. I'm not 100%. I thought it was a melon sword. I know that one back there is a red melon sword. They're kind of competing with each other here, trying to outcompete in size. But when you got bounce, when you have a bounce problem with your tank, you're gonna see it definitely on the plants. Like you can see it on the leaves. I remember in my old videos, you'll notice that a lot of my plants had a lot of algae, like hair algae, you know, pretty much any algae you can think of I had in my tanks. And that's because I was still learning on how to actually dose properly, so you're obviously going to have some algae. That's pretty much where it's going to be at when you first start out. Now, it also depends on what you have going in your tank. Now, for me, I have the do-it-yourself CO2 going. I have moderate light, maybe moderate to high light, and a high plant load. So what I actually do is over-fertilize, and this keeps the algae down because I don't have to worry about over-fertilizing since I have this nice water sprite up here. I have some duckweed growing in with it. The rotella is a stem plant, which means it uptakes those nutrients in the water very fast and grows pretty fast too. These plants, I forget what this stuff's called, but I got some right here and right here. It's a stem plant. You just put it into the gravel and it'll grow. It's pretty hardy, really. Like it'll grow pretty much anywhere. Like these are all just trimmings that I've trimmed off the top and planted back in the soil, and they'll grow in due time. But any stem plants are going to be good for, I shouldn't say any, most stem plants will be good for keeping the algae low. But I do highly recommend, if you're going to overdose fertilizers, to get some water sprite or any kind of floating plant, because these guys do a great job of taking the excess nutrients away from the algae. So the algae has pretty much no nutrients to survive, which means your tank's going to look great. Now, I should also show you this red Lewigia too. It is also a stem plant, and although it's a little bit slower growing than, say, rotella, it also gets the nutrients directly from the water column, so it's gonna be able to outcompete your algae. When you have only sword plants, you know, only rooted plants like Amazon swords, it's gonna be a little tougher competing with that algae. Unless you're really on a strict dosing regimen, it's going to be tough. So that's why, like, this water sprite, I can't say it enough. It's probably the best, the best $6-7 I've spent. I got a little bunch of it, and it's just, I take it out every single week. It just grows like crazy. So I definitely recommend this water sprite if you're going to overdose like I am. And talking about overdosing, I don't want to say that everyone should overdose, because that would be an incorrect statement saying that. But most people can get away with overdosing their tank, because when you underdose your tank, everything is competing for those little nutrients, and sometimes you'll have the algae bloom, like you see when you go away for holidays or something. Anything can trigger an algae bloom, really. But when you're under fertilizing, everything's competing for those little nutrients, and sometimes the algae does win the competition. Your plants will suffer, but the algae will start growing like crazy because you have that high light. It does depend on your lighting, but for my circumstances, I do have high light, and if I stop dosing certain fertilizers, I could start seeing the algae start you know, not immediately. You won't see anything happen immediately, but to give a good amount of time, I would say at least 2 weeks to see any changes. At least a week. I would prefer 2 weeks, and that goes for anything. Changing your, adding in a new fertilizer, changing the fertilizers, reducing the amount. Give it at least 2 weeks to see the effects on your tank. Otherwise, you don't really know what it's doing for your plants, what it's doing for the tank. So that's a good tip there. 2 weeks for any changes that you do make to see the effect. Any sooner, you're gonna be not really seeing the actual effect. It could be having a good effect and you cut it out and it was actually helping your plants tremendously. Like, some people really, you don't know. And moving away from that, I want to talk about, I have never tested any of the nutrient levels in the tank, in this tank anyways. I've never tested for iron, potassium, none of those things I've ever tested for. I've thought about it, getting a test kit, but I figured that if I did enough trial and error, I would eventually learn, and it's definitely the case because I pretty much can read my plants like a book now. Now that I've done it long enough, like, a lot of things bug me when things aren't right. It's kind of because I know that I can fix them. Sometimes just laziness, but I do put a lot of work into this tank, really. At least, on average, at least 3 hours a week I put into the tank, maybe 2. For one tank, that's quite a bit of time, out of your day, because it's probably more, like, I don't know, that's just a figure out of my head, but it's a good amount of time that I do spend on this tank, keeping it good and green looking, if you want to say. But I won't get into trimming and all that, because that'll be a different video. If you're interested in that video, I will be coming a trimming video, because it really is quite simple on how to trim most of your plants. Like, it's not really too much to talk about, but for some people, they're completely new. So that's why I have these videos. Anyways, like I said, trial and error is key to success with a planted tank. It's for fertilizers anyways. Sorry about that, guys. The camera just died, so right at the end of the video I was just getting wrapped up ready to end the video, and the battery died. So I just basically charged it, and I'm just gonna finish off the video. And just because this happened, I'm gonna end it off with a little treat for you guys. You don't get to see this very often, of actually feeding the fish. And tonight I'm just feeding them some omega-1 cichlid flakes, but really basically they're the same as tropical flakes. Tropical flakes actually have a little bit more protein in them and a little bit less of anything else, because tropical fish, they love their protein, and cichlids are a little different. They like their fibers and stuff like that. Like, I love these omega-1 flake foods. I'm just gonna say that. But like this here, it's got a little bit higher fat too than I would like, and the tropical mixes usually have lower fat and a little bit higher protein, usually over 40% protein, and that's what you're looking for. So usually I'll give them a little bit of this, and they go pretty crazy over it. I'll just turn this down here. But they do go pretty crazy when the food comes out. Like, these rainbows are pretty well just as active around feeding time as any cichlids would be, so it's definitely nice. And maybe that's all I'll give them for tonight, because I kind of gave them a whole lot here. But they're very active, very, very active fish. If you're looking for anything that resembles cichlids which I kind of was, looking for something colorful, active, you know, had personality, and within the planted tank. And the rainbows are definitely meet any criteria for that. Alright, I'll wrap this video up here. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, like I said, look out for those updates, because they will be coming. You know, it may not be within the next couple of days, but they will be within the next couple of weeks, that's for sure. I'm going to try to get a video. I'm not saying this for all the time, but for right now, you should see one within the next 1 or 2 weeks. So look out for that. I hope you enjoyed watching. I hope you got some good information from the video. Like if you enjoyed it. Comment if you have any questions. And as always, subscribe. Thanks for watching, guys.